Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Inquisition Update. My name's Tom Fress, and I'll be your host for the next hour. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Now let's return where we left off yesterday in the book, The History of Romanism by John Dowling. Yesterday we learned that on the 9th of September in the city of Westminster, the legate of the Pope, while the King of England was out of the country, I think he was in Normandy at the time, the legate of the Pope convened a synod of bishops, and they promulgated Roman Catholic canon law. While the king was out of the country, the priests of Rome made law, binding upon every Englishman. And to prove even further the Pope's power over the king, the Pope summoned the two archbishops, the one from Canterbury and the one from York, England, to repair to Rome to receive their prerogatives from the Pope. Okay, this was to prove this usurpation of the kingly power in England was to prove the Pope's power over the King of England, to prove his power of investiture. Okay, to prove beyond anyone's doubt who the King of Kings is. That's what was established. Now, part of the canons that were passed into law during this open and flagrant synod of bishops was that having to do with the priestly marriage. Okay, in the Roman Catholic Church, the doctrines of demons is taught that the priests are forbidden to marry. Forbidding to marry. It's an identifying characteristic of the Antichrist, and that is what the papacy has insisted upon, that its priests be unmarried, that is, celibate. Okay? Now, it says in the second paragraph of subsection 31, page 271, if you're following along, it says, in the night which succeeded the conclusion of this council, this synod of bishops, an incident occurred which made a prodigious noise throughout England and brought no little scandal on the Roman clergy. John de Crema, the Pope's legate, who had declaimed with great warmth in the council the day before in honor of immaculate chastity, okay, sexless, marriageless priests, and inveighed with no less vehemence against the horrid impurity of the married clergy, was actually detected in bed with a common prostitute. So as I alluded yesterday, this is how God always throws a monkey wrench into the Antichrist works. Okay? The doctrine of demons coming down from the Pope of Rome, declaring celibacy to be the law of the priests of the so-called Christian church. The very legate who represented the Pope at this synod was caught that night in the bed of a common prostitute. While the Roman Catholic Church was forbidding its priests to marry, the legate from the Pope was caught in bed with a prostitute. Okay? See the hypocrisy? And this should be no less shocking to you than in a paragraph previous where the papacy chided the King of England for even thinking to exercise the power of investiture in appointing a bishop or an archbishop in England, saying that it would be like a man, that is the king, a man conceiving his own father, okay? Or an ordinary man fashioning his own God, okay? Now, the hypocrisy in that is that the Roman Catholic priests and the popes call themselves the creator of their creator, when they stand at the altar in the Mass and elevate the piece of bread and say, "This is the body of Christ, hoc est corpus meum," they transform the bread into the literal blood, body, soul, and divinity. And by their own description, this is a man creating God in front of the people. Okay? They find no hypocrisy in that. And then turn around and charge the king of attempting to create his own God by appointing an archbishop. And at the same time, the hypocrisy reigns when the Pope says that all the priests should be celibate, married without wives, celibate and chaste, and while at the same time the Pope's legate is caught in bed with a prostitute. Demonstration after demonstration of lying hypocrisies. And this is the defining characteristic of the Roman Catholic Church, the synagogue of Satan. All right, it says, in the night which succeeded the conclusion of this council, this is when celibacy was proclaimed as a canon of the Roman Catholic Church, a law of the Roman Catholic Church that none of the priests should be married. An incident occurred which made a prodigious noise throughout England and brought no little scandal on the Roman clergy. John de Crema, the very man who sent by the Pope to pass these canons forbidding to marry, who had declaimed with great warmth in the council the day before in honor of the immaculate chastity, that is, the marriedless priests, and inveighed with no less vehemence against the horrid impurity of married clergy, was actually detected in bed with a common prostitute. Now, let me retreat just a bit. Look at the words he used to treat marriage. Horrid impurity. Okay? This is how the papacy and his priests and his nuns and all the monks, all the ecclesiastics of the Roman Catholic Church, from the archbishop to the bishops to the priest, the whole lot are forbidden to marry. They regard marriage as a horrid impurity. Okay, this is the doctrine of demons. Now, what effect does this have on married men and women? Lawfully married men and women. That somehow they've fallen from the pure state of virginity. Okay? Now, not being able to repress their natural, God-given longing for the opposite sex, they marry. And they have sex, they have children. Okay? They gratify the natural, pure sexuality that God gave man and women. All right? But when they see the priests of the Roman Catholic Church and all the hierarchy call marriage a horrid impurity, even the most liberal-minded man or woman in the so-called Christian world finds an automatic repression in the bedroom. Okay? This is what leads to marital infidelity. Because when a lawfully married man and woman come together to enjoy the gift of marriage, they are repressed. They are impressed with this mentality that somehow they have fallen from the pure state of virginity. And so sex, when it occurs, is not completely gratifying because somehow they feel like they're doing something dirty. Okay? Now, the natural desire between a man and a woman cannot be quenched. Not without God's help. So what happens when a man and a woman lawfully married, engaged in the marital bliss, are somehow not fulfilled. They feel like they're doing something dirty. They feel like they're doing something evil or wicked. Never mind that they can't suppress that desire, but they're unfulfilled. They don't have freedom. They are repressed, feeling like they've fallen from the pinnacle of purity when they come together. And this leads to sexual dissatisfaction, sexual cognitive dissonance, if you will. And eventually, Satan torments them to the point where they just want to be free to express themselves freely as God intended. And so they leave the marriage and they find sexual gratification somewhere else. Both men and women do it. Now, I maintain that the law of the Roman Catholic Church that forbids marriage is what has precipitated the widespread, almost common plague of marital infidelity and divorce and illegitimate children and on and on and on. If the Roman Catholic Church had never promulgated this Roman Catholic canon law forbidding marriage, had never cast an evil color to the face of human sexuality, the natural, God-given, pure desire between a man and a woman in the state of holy matrimony could satisfy one another, could be perfectly happy with their sexual lives. No guilt, no shame, nothing to hide, no laws restricting, and would not seek satisfaction outside the home. Now, if you can wrap your brain around the complications that have arisen for God-given marriage because of this teaching of the Roman Catholic Church that somehow sex between a man and a woman is filthy and dirty and somehow less than the God-given state of virginity, if you can wrap your brain around that, you can understand the plagues of the world. Okay? You can understand all the fatherless children, all the motherless children, all the bastard sons and daughters of these failed marriages. Had the man and the woman been allowed with a free conscience to live the matrimonial life, fully satisfying in one another, they would have never sought solace outside the home. They would never have sought, quote-unquote, freedom outside the home. Do you realize that the marriage bed is a sanctuary where we can satisfy our desires without guilt, without shame, without limitation? Why would a man seek a relationship with a strange woman when he's being perfectly and completely satisfied by his own loving wife? And likewise she. Who would seek pleasure outside the bedroom with a stranger with whom there is no lawful connection? Okay? Here's the mentality. If somehow sex is filthy within the confines of the marriage bed, and that every time you fall to temptation, quote unquote, and you engage in the marital privilege, you feel guilty, you feel dirty, somehow that you have fallen, well then, God is a tormentor. Because God gave this desire, we can't sequester it, we can't wish it away. It continually drives us to satisfy this desire, but it's dirty, it's filthy. You see, what do we think of God? He's a tormentor, right? Now, if sin between a man and a woman is not satisfying, that somehow there's some level of guilt associated with it, then sex becomes sinful. What God created is sinful. That makes God a sinner, right? How perfectly convenient this is for Rome. Now, if you feel somehow sinful in doing that which there is no sin, the Scripture plainly says the marriage bed is undefiled. Okay, that means something. The marriage bed is undefiled. In another place it says, where there is no law, there is no sin. Because sin is the violation of the law. Now, if there's no law, you cannot commit sin. That is the sanctuary of the marriage bed. There's no law governing it. Only that sex is between a married woman and a married man, together, alone, behind closed doors. They're not to be sexual in public. That's lasciviousness. But together in the privacy, the man and his married wife together in the bedroom is a sanctuary, an inviolable sanctuary. There's no law and there is no sin in the marriage bed. So you're free to satisfy. You're free to gratify. You are free to enjoy. And if you are enjoying that relationship to the degree that you want, why would you want to go somewhere else? Again, infidelity in the marriage is caused by the doctrine of demons of the Roman Catholic Church that somehow makes the God-given relationship between a man and his wife somehow less than pristine. Look, the mentality goes like this. If sex is dirty in the marriage bed, then sex is dirty. And I can't quench my sexual desire, so I can go anywhere I want to gratify my sexual desire. I'm bound to sin. I'm bound to sin with my wife in the bedroom, and I'm a sinner, and I'm all day, day and night, a sinner, so I just as well sin to my heart's content. You can't win. Okay? It's damned if I do and damned if I don't. So they throw conscience to the wind, and they go around pollinating every little flower they can find, kind of rubbing it in God's nose. Look, you made me this way, God. You gave me these healthy desires, and then you made sex sin. So I'm going to sin to my heart's content. You see, man just throws up his hands and says, I can't win. I'm damned if I do, and I'm damned if I don't. I'm going to have some fun. All right? Do you understand the mentality? None of this would be possible had not the Roman Catholic Church passed the doctrine of demons and made it a matter of Roman Catholic canon law that priests are forbidden to marry, that nuns are forbidden to marry, that the monks and all the prelates, all the Roman Catholic clergymen are forbidden to marry, that somehow, even though God created it, it's sinful. If it's sinful for the priests, they being men and women, just like you and me, you cut them with a knife, they bleed blood just like you and me. There's nothing really different. If sex is a sin for the clergy, men and women, then that has to taint the marriage bed. And now the world is full of sin. I want my listeners, if you understand what I've just told you, to write me an email telling you, I finally get it, Tom. I understand why the Bible calls this the doctrine of demons, forbidding to marry. It was God who created Adam and Eve in the garden. It was God who oversaw their marriage. And it was God who made no law respecting that marriage relationship. Okay? There is no guilt or shame in the marriage bedroom. There is no limitation, there's no law, and there's no sin. So have a ball. Enjoy one another as often as you like. Gratify your desire, your love for one another, And for heaven's sakes, don't take these carnal desires outside of the sanctuary, because you pollute the whole world when you do it. You turn God's world on its head when you do it. Don't follow the example of the demonic priests of Rome and their doctrines of demons. Don't believe that what God made between a man and a woman is sinful, because if you begin to believe that anything about the relationship between a lawfully married man and woman is sinful, then you've opened up the floodgates for a world of sin. Don't be deceived by this Roman Catholic canon law forbidding to marry. Don't let it taint your lawful relationship, your holy relationship with your wife. See, we can't even call this relationship between a man and his wife holy, can we? That's how far we've been indoctrinated. Your relationship with your wife, your relationship with your husband, in the confines of your bedroom, in the marriage bed, is undefiled. There's no guilt. There's no shame. There's no law. There's no restriction. So have no guilt. And if you have no guilt and you're perfectly satisfied, there's no need to go out the house. No need. There would be no prostitutes. There would be no pornography. There would be nothing to tempt a man to go outside the marriage bed. But the Roman Catholic law, the Roman Catholic canon law, makes sin of sex what God created. It makes God a tormentor who gave us these desires. Do you see how crafty Satan is? Now, if you understand this mentality, and I've opened up a door of reasoning for you from the Scriptures, and you're comprehending how God called this doctrine of demons, this forbidding to marry, I want you to write me, email me, tom@seawaves.us. I want to know that somebody's finally heard this message and learned it. You're not likely to hear it from your pastor. No, because he's repressed too, see? He can't counsel you on sexual things because he's been tainted by Roman Catholic canon law. It's a subject that he cannot speak about. But I can. I understand the Scriptures. And I'm free. And I want you to be free. And if you're free within the confines of your marriage bed, you will not seek satisfaction outside the bed. And you will live a godly married life. Let the priests of Rome go to hell for damning marriage. Let the priests and popes of Rome go to hell for calling that which God created to be enjoyed between a man and his wife. Let them go to hell for calling it sinful. Now, I've said my piece. But God threw a monkey wrench at the very time when the Pope tried to promote this doctrine of demons, forbidding to marry in Protestant Great Britain. And what was found out was the very legate from the Pope who promulgated this Roman Catholic canon law in England that very night was found in bed with a prostitute. Now you know the truth. Now, you might be asking yourself, why is Tom speaking so passionately about sex between a married woman and a married man? Because I'm the victim of Rome's teaching. I come from a broken family. I lived all my life without the benefit of a loving, wise father. My father was tormented. He was an infidel. somehow sex was dirty. It was ungratifying. And he sought a solution outside the family, outside the marriage bed. He wasn't satisfied at home, obviously, because Mom thought sex was dirty. I don't want this to happen to you or your children or your children's children. No child should live without a father. And a child should live every day witnessing the loving, caring affection of his parents and looking forward to marriage by their example, and to grow up enjoying the gift that God gave man and woman. When you understand sex from a biblical point of view, you are completely satisfied. No guilt, no shame, only praise for a God who knows how to give good gifts. Now, I look more forward to seeing his face than I ever did before in my life, because I know he's not a tormentor. And I know I've experienced what good gifts he can give. And it's only going to get better when we see his face. You think sex is pleasurable? You wait till we get to heaven and find the pleasures that God has stored for us. They will render sex obsolete. I'm confident of that. But from here on out, the rest of my life, I'll never entertain any guilty thoughts in my relationship with my wife. And neither of us will ever have cause to go outside the marriage bed. You see, for most of my life, I lived under the example, under the condition of Rome's torments. That somehow, even though it was lawful, I was doing something dirty. Those days are gone. And now I'm free. Would to God that Rome had never promulgated this doctrine of demons, so that I could have grown up with a loving, caring father and would have benefited from his wisdom and his guidance and direction, and likewise a mother who knew how to love without guilt, without shame, that our family could have stayed together and worshiped God together. That's why I can speak passionately about this subject. And I want my listeners to benefit. Let not the truth of the Scripture regarding marital bliss be polluted by Rome. Now, in perfect example, with the hypocrisy of the Roman Catholic Church, the hypocrisy that is the Roman Catholic Church, this very prelate who sought to make it illegal for a priest in Great Britain to be married was caught that very night in the arms of a prostitute. God gave his answer immediately that very night after they promulgated this Roman Catholic canon law forbidding to marry in the clergy. God made it evident that this man from the Pope was caught in bed with a prostitute. Okay? God's judgment was immediately rendered. Now it says the detection was so undeniable and soon became so public that the legate was both ashamed and afraid to show his face. That the legate was both ashamed and afraid to show his face. But he sneaked out of England with all possible secrecy and precipitation. In other words, he was in a hurry to get out of England. This incident gave a temporary triumph, not a permanent one, a temporary triumph to the married clergy, who had probably been the detectors of this sinful union, and thus rendered the canon of the late council against them abortive and contemptible. Okay? So at least for a time, they made an example out of this papal legate, and they just trashed this Roman Catholic canon law forbidding to marry. And the priests of the Roman Catholic Church continued to get married. Okay? Even the priests of Rome can see hypocrisy when God shows it to them. And they went ahead and got married. For a long time, the priests of England were married. But eventually, England fell. Now ask yourself, what about the priests of the United States? They're celibate, aren't they? And what do we see? Global scandal. Pedophilia. God did not give them chastity. God gave them the natural desire that He created in the Garden of Eden between a man and a woman. They can't quench it, and God hasn't quenched it, so they seek anywhere and everywhere to satisfy their desires. And the world is full of their example. That's why I talk so frequently about the global pedophile priest pandemic. They debauch one another. They debauch anybody and everybody they can. And it's a daily testimony to the error that is the Roman Catholic Church. You see, what God mercifully revealed in England is revealed every day today. And I want you to notice that the civil courts of this land have no jurisdiction over these pedophile priests. And when a civil court, a criminal court, takes a case and tries a guilty priest for his pedophilia, it's only by exception to Roman Catholic canon law, because in Roman Catholic canon law, no priest answers to the civil power. It's unlawful in Roman Catholic canon law for the civil courts to handle cases of priests. That's a matter of Roman Catholic canon law. If a civil court or a criminal court in this country takes a case against a priest, it's only by permission of the local bishop. It's in a case where the Pope makes an exception for this or that priest. Generally, it is unlawful for any civil jurisdiction to have anything whatsoever to do with the priesthood. If they commit sin, if they commit a crime, no matter how egregious, they are to be adjudicated by a tribunal of Roman Catholic priests under the surveillance of the Pope. Okay? That's why the priests of the Roman Catholic Church are outlaws. By definition, they are outlaws. Another identifying characteristic of the Antichrist. All right, the prelate from Rome who passed this canon law forbidding to marry of the priesthood was that very night caught in the bed of a prostitute, and it was known all over England, so much so that the prelate had to escape Great Britain, England. Now he says this incident gave a temporary triumph to the married clergy, who had probably been the detectors, and thus rendered the canon law, that forbidding to marry, of the late Synod of Bishops against them abortive and contemptible. Okay? So for a long time, the law of celibacy was held in contempt in England because of this example. Subsection 34 at the bottom of page 271, he said, "Yet so intent was the court of Rome on making good its right to the character of Antichrist by prohibiting marriage, that in the following year, 1127 A.D., a national synod was convened at Westminster on the 17th day of May, in the canons of which the marriage of the clergy is styled, quote, the plague of the church, unquote. And all dignitaries are commanded to exert their most zealous efforts to root it out. Okay? Rome didn't relent, even with this embarrassing example. The legate caught in the bed of a prostitute was not enough to make marriage legal among the priesthood of England. The Pope insisted that the priests be celibate, and he called the marriage of the priest the plague of the church. Okay? It's filthy. Sex is filthy. Marriage is filthy. That's the whole teaching of the Roman Catholic Church, that if you've fallen into sex, you have fallen into sin. That affects not only the priest, but the clergy, but the people. All right? This is why the whole world is steeped in sin. Now, look what the Pope does. He says the wives of the priests and canons were not only to be separated from them, but to be banished out of the parish. That's right. If you are a priest, a monk, a nun, or a canon, or any other official of the Roman Catholic Church, if you were bound by this Roman Catholic canon law of celibacy, you had to give up your wife. And not only did you have to give her up, but she was banished out of your parish. Okay? Parishes are ecclesiastical jurisdictions like counties in the United States, over which a parish priest presided. Okay? Just like counties today. Yes, the priests oversee the counties in the United States. He's the most powerful man in every locality. The parish or the county priest, or the priest of the diocese. That's another name for the ecclesiastical jurisdiction. Okay, so they had to give up their wives, and their wives had to get out of the parish, get out of the country, get out of the county, get out of the ecclesiastical jurisdiction in which the priest resided. Had to go to another parish. Okay? And if they ever after conversed with their husbands, merely talked to him, they were to be seized by the ministers of the church and subjected to ecclesiastical discipline or reduced to servitude at the discretion of the who? The bishop. And if any person, great or small, attempted to deliver these unhappy victims, these poor wives, out of the hands of these ministers of the church, they were to be excommunicated. Okay? So who did the wife belong to once she was taken away from her husband? The bishop. Right? So every bishop's got a harem, doesn't he? You see the hypocrisy in all this? The doctrine of demons. Who does it benefit? The power structure of Rome. From the popes right down to his bishops. Now, we all reel when we learn about the Turkish harems, don't we? The sinful, wicked Muslims, the Turks. They all have their harems. What about the priests of Rome? You see why we should never call it a Christian church? The popes have the power over the women of these priests. And the bishop is placed in charge of their care. They're forbidden ever to talk to their husbands once they've been removed from their husbands. They are to be subjects of the bishop. And if anybody tries to wrestle that woman out of the bishop's hand and give her back to her husband, he's excommunicated. Ipso facto excommunicated. Now do you understand why there's so much sexual depravity among the bishops and the cardinals and the priests of the Roman Catholic Church? Her life from then on is at the discretion of the bishop. Okay? A celibate bishop. Hardy har har. That's right. Now there's no possibility of being caught in the bed of a prostitute, right? When the parish is clear, just chock full of women that used to be married and are now under the direction of the bishop, why would a bishop have to go to a prostitute when he's got a whole parish full of them? Are you getting it? He says the wives of the priests and the canons were not only to be separated from their husbands, but they were to be banished out of the parish. And if they ever conversed with their husbands, they were to be seized by the who? The ministers of the church. Who are they? Celibates. And then they were to be held in subject to the ecclesiastical discipline. I wonder how the bishop disciplines these women. You wonder? And if they were not disciplined, in other words, if they were ugly, they were reduced to servitude, laundries for the priests, in the basement, out of sight and out of mind. Okay? And at the discretion of the who? The bishop. At the discretion of the bishop. And if any person, great or small, that includes the king, attempted to deliver these unhappy victims out of the hands of the who? The ministers of the church. Celibates, right? They were to be excommunicated. Now, why would Rome react so violently against someone who just wants to return a lawfully wedded wife to her husband? Because they're taking her out of the damnable hands of the priests. That's why they were excommunicated. And he says such were the violent and cruel measures necessary to be employed in order to compel, to force the clergy of England to do violence to the laws of nature, those established by God in the Garden of Eden between Adam and Eve, and by breaking up all the domestic relations to render them the more willing, subservient, and devoted tools of Rome. Tools of Rome or prostitutes of Rome? You think I'm calumniating the Roman Catholic Church? Do you think I'm making more of this than what this author is revealing? Then explain to me the global pedophile priest pandemic. Explain to me the hundreds of thousands of priests who still, despite all their access to nuns, still are found in the beds of prostitutes. The sexual scandal of the Roman Catholic Church is monumental. And it's as old as the Roman Catholic Church itself. This is what happens when you declare unholy what God created to make holy between a man and a woman. This is what happens when you filthify what God ordained as holy between a man and a woman. This is what happens when you adopt the doctrine of demons. And do you know the sexual proclivities of all the politicians in Washington, D.C. are fashioned after the sexual proclivities of their bosses, their spiritual bosses, the priests and the cardinals of Rome? You wonder why there's so much sex scandal among the politicians? They're only following the example of their priests. To them, sex is filthy. So they revel in it. Can't find sexual satisfaction at home, so they revel in it. They think what they do with their spouses at home is filthy, so they revel in it. Washington is nothing but a sex cesspool, just like her whorish Romish mother in Rome, Italy. A sexual cesspool. It has been forever. And this is one of the things that Martin Luther saw with his own eyes when he made his trip to Rome. He was disgusted and abhorred by what he found in Rome. Adjacent to the Vatican was a street lined with houses of prostitution. And who did they service? The priests and the cardinals and the popes of Rome. Now you know why he protested the Roman Catholic Church. He saw what every person sees every day all over the world, sexual perversion. And it's all because of the doctrine of demons taught by the Roman Catholic Church. And we're all tainted by it. Every one of us are tainted by it. And that's why every one of us are subject to the temptations of this world. Because we continue to see, by Roman Catholic canon law's example, that sex between a married man and a married woman is somehow sinful. We've got to repent. Stop calling sinful what God made holy. Okay? Learn to be able to distinguish between the holy and the profane. That's the whole list. That's the whole mission of a Christian man. And where do we find what is holy? In the Scriptures. What do we find what is unholy? As common in the world. And it's common among the Roman Catholic priests to have concubines, to have prostitutes, to have the wife of another priest, and to share, to debauch one another, and even to debauch little boys. If you find an example of sexual depravity in your community, you can identify the source of that depravity in the Roman Catholic Church. Now, are we going to continue calling the Roman Catholic Church a Christian church? Are we going to continue in the name of God to reunite with this doctrine of demons? To be Catholic? To continue to allow our civil government to promulgate Roman Catholic canon law and make it the civil law of this land? To force us all to comply with Roman Catholic canon law under another cover? Are we going to continue to let the doctrine of demons destroy our married lives? Where is the liberty whereby Christ hath made us free? We've surrendered it by following the example of Rome and following his Roman Catholic canon law and the doctrine of demons. We allow the priests of Rome to go control our governments, the federal government, the state government, the county government, and your local government. You should never vote in any election, and certainly you should never vote for a Roman Catholic, because they serve the man of sin. They cast God's law aside, and they promote Roman Catholic canon law. And that's why crime prevails in this country especially.